Today's hearing is for the American people who are seeking answers about the attempted assassination of President Trump. A little over a week ago, Americans watched in horror as a shooter attempted to assassinate President Donald J. Trump at a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. The gunman nearly succeeded. The bullet that struck President Trump's head was less than an inch from taking his life. The Secret Service has a zero-fail mission, but it failed. Today's witness, Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle, is here under subpoena to answer questions about how the agency failed President Trump and the victims who attended the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. It is my firm belief, Director Cheadle, that you should resign. However, in complete defiance, Director Cheadle has maintained she will not tender her resignation. Therefore, she will answer questions today from members of this committee seeking to provide clarity to the American people about how these events were allowed to transpire.
The day after President Trump is shot, Secret Service spokesman Anthony Guglielmi said, quote, "The assertion that a member of the former president's security team requested additional security resources that the U.S. Secret Service or the Department of Homeland Security rebuffed is absolutely false." The next day, Secretary Mayorkas said, "That is an unequivocally false assertion. We had not received any request for additional security measures that were rebuffed." But 5 days later, the Washington Post said this: "Top officials repeatedly rejected requests from Donald Trump's security detail for more personnel." The next day, the New York Times said this: "Mr. Guglielmi acknowledged that the Secret Service had turned down some requests for additional federal security assets for Mr. Trump's detail." So which is it? Because both statements can't be true. Were you guessing or lying when you said you didn't turn down requests from President Trump's detail?
Neither, sir, and I appreciate the question.
Well, what were you doing? Because those statements don't jive.
So what I can tell you is that for the event in Butler, there were no requests that were denied. As far as requests—
Well, maybe they got tired of asking. Maybe you turned them down so darn much they said, not worth asking. How many times did you turn them down ahead of that?
I think that it is important to distinguish between what some people may view as a denial of an asset or a request.
Well, is Mr. Guglielmi your spokesperson? He said he acknowledged the Secret Service had turned down some requests. I'm asking how many?
A denial of a request does not equal a vulnerability.
Well, tell me what it is.
There are a number of ways that threats and risks can be mitigated with a number of different assets, whether that be through personnel, whether that be through technology, or other resources.
Well, tell the committee which it was. They asked for additional help in some form or another. You told them no. How many times did you tell them no, and what did you tell them no to?
I cannot speak to specific incidents, but I can tell you in general terms, the Secret Service is judicious with their resources based on—
What does some requests mean? How many times? Some indicate requests is plural. So more than once they asked for additional help and you turned them down. What did they ask for and how many times did you turn them down? Pretty basic questions.
So again, without having all of the details in front of me, sir, what I can tell you is that there are times—
You didn't get briefed on how many times you turned down the Trump detail when they asked for additional help?
I'm sorry.
You didn't get briefed on that before you came to this hearing, knowing you were going to get asked that question?
What I can tell you is that in generic terms, when details make a request, there are times that there are alternate ways to cover off on that threat or that risk.
But that's not what he said. He said they were denied certain requests, some requests. This is your spokesperson, not me talking. This is the Secret Service talking. And what a change from absolutely false, unequivocally false to, oh, by the way, there were some times where we didn't give them what they wanted. That's a huge change in 5 days. And the fact that you can't answer how many times you did that, that's pretty darn frustrating, not just for me, but for the country.
I hear your frustration.
Let me ask you this. Were any of those requests denied to President Trump's detail after you knew about the Iranian threat?
What I can tell you, again, I don't know the specifics, is that there are times when we can fill a request. It doesn't necessarily have to be with a Secret Service asset or resource. We can fill that request with locally available assets.
You spoke to anyone at the White House since July 13th?
Yes, I have.
Who'd you talk to?
I have briefed the President and the Vice President.
Talk to the First Lady?
No, I have not.
Talked to the White House staff, anyone in the White House communications?
No, I have not.
Have you talked to the counter sniper who took the shot that took out the bad guy?
Yes, I have.
And can you tell us about that conversation?
I would not want to reveal conversations that I've had with my employees.
But that's exactly the kind of information the American people want to know. American people who pay your salary.
I understand this is an ongoing investigation, and
Who's all doing the investigating at Secret Service? I know the Inspector General, but is there also an internal investigation in addition to the Inspector General?
We are conducting a mission assurance investigation internally, yes.
You know what it looks like, Director? It looks like you won't answer some pretty basic questions. It looks like you got a 9% raise and you cut corners when it came to protecting one of the most important individuals, most well-known individuals on the planet. A former president, likely the guy who's going to be the next president. It looks like you guys were cutting corners. That's what it looks like to me.
Director Cheadle, have you read the intelligence of the generalized threat to Donald Trump by Iran as a result of their desire to retaliate for the killing of Soleimani?
I have.
Have you read or been briefed about the intelligence of the specific recent threat to Donald Trump from Iran?
Yes, I have.
Director Wray, when we were getting our briefing, indicated that he thought the threat assessment should have included this threat from Iran. Is it your testimony today that the threat assessment, since you've read this intelligence, was sufficient to protect him from this threat from Iran?
My testimony today is that the information that we had at the time was known.
Was it sufficient? Director Cheadle, was it sufficient for the Iranian threat that you said you have read the intelligence briefings for?
That information was passed to...
Well, I'm not asking the bureaucratic issue of who did it get passed around to. Director Cheadle, was it sufficient for the specific and generalized threat to Donald Trump's life from Iran?
Yes, I do believe it was.
Director Cheadle, is an Iranian assassin more capable than a 20-year-old?
First of all, there was a failure to isolate the podium from exposure to direct fire. Do we know who made that decision to allow that rooftop to remain as an unprotected area? Do we know who came up with that security plan that omitted that?
Sir, I don't have a specific person to identify for you.
Okay, well, that's what I'm looking for, so let's move on. There's also a breakdown in security and failure to confront the shooter over an hour before the former president began his remarks when the shooter was identified as a person of interest. What particularly allowed agents or law enforcement to identify him as a person of interest?
So I appreciate the question, and again, I will say that we are 9 days out, and there are a multitude of interviews that are still taking place.
Okay, so did he have a rangefinder? There were some reports that the individual had a rangefinder. That would certainly raise my suspicion. Did he have a rangefinder?
Yes, he did, but may I explain that at a number of our sites, especially when you're at outdoor venues, a rangefinder is not a prohibited item. It is sometimes an item that is brought in by individuals if you're going to be in the back.
Did anybody confront him on that? Anybody ask him questions? What are you doing with the rangefinder? Anybody confront him on his presence where he was in proximity to the president?
So again, to my knowledge, I believe that was the process that was taking place, was to locate the individual.
Did they confront him? Did they go up to him? Did they talk to him?
I do not have those details at this time.
Those are important details.
Do we know which agents fired the shots that finally took down the potential assassin?
Yes, sir, I do.
Can you give us those names or background of those agents?
I would not offer their name up in this setting, but it was one of our technical officers, our counter snipers.
Okay, so can we privately get those names, the committee?
I am certain that we can make names available privately.
Okay. Do we know where all the shots landed? First of all, how many shots did that potential assassin, how many shots came out of the rifle?
So again, I would hesitate to offer that information as the FBI is conducting an investigation.
Have we got the bullets from all the shots?
Again, that would be the responsibility of the FBI to collect that evidence.
Okay. Do we have the correspondence from the shooter? Has that been recovered from his phone, whatever?
Again, I would have to defer you to the FBI for details on that investigation.
Director Cheadle, as you know, the shooter began shooting at 6:11 p.m. Eastern on July 13th. NBC reported that at 5:51 p.m., 20 minutes before the shooting began, the state police informed the Secret Service of their concern. Now, the rally was not paused at that point, correct?
No.
And according to NBC, just 2 minutes later, at 5:53 p.m., the Secret Service notified its snipers about the gunman. The rally wasn't paused at that point either, correct?
No.
Let me show you some video footage by rally goers. If you could play the video on the screen up here. This was taken 2 minutes before the shooting started. If you could turn up the volume.
Dangerous people, criminals. We have criminals.
He's
we
on
have
the roof. He's
drug
right.
dealers. We have people that
Right
should
here,
not be here.
right on the roof.
It's much tougher
He's
than
up now.
it happens.
He went right on the roof.
Ma'am, that doesn't look like suspicious behavior. That looks like threatening behavior to me. And the rally wasn't paused at that point either, correct?
I can tell you, as I stated earlier, sir, that the moment that the shift surrounding the president were aware of an actual threat.
That's a threat right there. The guy's on the roof and everybody's yelling at him.
Yes.
And directing the officer's attention to him. The rally was not paused at that point, correct?
We are currently still combing through communications and when communications were passed.
Well, I can point you to this communication. It's 2 minutes before the shots started ringing out. Director Cheadle, yes or no? Was there ever a moment where the Secret Service actually considered pausing the rally?
The Secret Service would have paused the rally had they known or been
So the
told
answer is
there
no.
was an actual threat.
The answer is no, correct?
I can speak to you in generalities.
No, I don't want
I don't
generalities. I
know
want
all of the
specifics.
communications
The
that were-
answer is no. You did not consider pausing the rally, correct?
The people that are in charge of protecting the president on that day would never bring the former president out if there was a threat that had been identified.
Well, they did, because we've now identified 3 points in the 20 minutes before the shooting that the threat emerged. Let me point you to something else, which is the building that the shooter was perched on, seen here. This building is called the AGR building. I'm sure that you're familiar with it. It's no more than 150 yards from the stage where Donald Trump stood, yet the security perimeter was drawn such that the AGR building was placed outside of it. Director Cheadle, according to the Washington Post, the AR-15 styled rifle used in the shooting had a range of 400 to 600 yards, and therefore the AGR building was clearly within rifle range of the stage, correct?
Yes.
Let me turn your attention to some conspiracy theories that have been circulating and ask you to comment on them. First, you have not found evidence that the incident was a staged shooting, right?
Correct.
And you haven't found evidence that this was a result of a conspiracy of high-ranking government officials, correct?
Correct.
And you have not found evidence that this incident was in fact directed or perpetrated by a foreign state or entity, right?
And that's the last question, but I'll let the director answer that, please.
Not at this time.
Thank you. I yield back.
I think it's troubling for a lot of us that the number one question everyone in America is wondering is why was the roof left open? And after 9 days, we should at least maybe have a little bit of that information. And when you come to this committee hearing and you don't have anything to say about that, it's very, very troubling. Did you review the security plan for this event?
I personally do not review security plans for events that take place across the country.
Any of them?
We have a number of events that
Who's
take
the
place.
top level official who reviews the security plans?
There's a number of people that review security plans.
Who's
as they
ultimately
unfold.
responsible for signing off on a security plan?
It's a conjunction of personnel. There are people on the ground, there are supervisors on the detail, there are people at headquarters.
So there's not one person who says, okay, this is good, it's copacetic, we're going for it?
I think much in the way that we build our security plans, where they are
No
multi-layered.
doubt there's teams working different aspects of it, but ultimately, isn't there an individual who signs off on the plan?
Much like how we design our security plans, they're multi-layered. There are multiple layers.
So there's
of
no
people.
accountability.
There is accountability, sir.
There's, this is whether it's the FBI or Fauci or anything, it's time after time after time, these multiple layers of accountability turn into layers of plausible deniability, and agency after agency after agency. That's got to be fixed, because you keep coming here and expecting, yes, you're saying I'm responsible, but and you're accountable for it, but then there's nothing. What do you mean by that? I mean, you're saying you're going to keep your job, right?
Now, Director Jadol, would you agree that this is the most serious security lapse since President Reagan was shot in 1981 of the Secret Service?
Yes, sir, I would.
And, you know, do you know what Stuart Knight did when he was in charge at the time of the Secret Service? Do you know what he did afterwards?
He remained on duty.
He resigned. He resigned. And Stuart Knight was not a Democratic appointee or a Republican appointee. Look, I'm not questioning your judgment. I just don't think this is partisan. If you have an assassination attempt on a president, a former president, or a candidate, you need to resign. That's what Stuart Knight did. He was a Republican appointee, and he took responsibility. And I think you need to reflect. This is not a question of you. It's a question of the American people. You cannot go leading a Secret Service agency when there is an assassination attempt on a presidential candidate. I would say that about anyone who is running. And so I guess my question to you is, what's the difference between your position and what Stuart Knight did?
What I will tell you, sir, is that I am dedicated to finding the answers to what happened. And like every Secret Service agent, we don't shirk from our responsibilities. I will remain on and be responsible to the agency, to this committee, to the former president, and to the American public.
But is there a reason you wouldn't just do what Stuart Knight did after the Reagan assassination attempt?
I believe that I provided an answer.
There's nothing more that you have to say? I mean, do you really believe at this moment, given how divided the country is and the questions asked, that your service in this role is the best for the nation? I mean, I'm not saying you can't do public service again, you can't do something else again. Do you really genuinely in your heart believe that you being in this role is what's right for America at this moment? I mean, do you think there are people who are Trump supporters who have confidence in you? The one thing that we've got to have agencies in this country that are transcend politics, that have the confidence of independents, Democrats, Republicans, progressives, conservatives. Do you really believe that the majority of this country has confidence in you right now?
I believe that the country deserves answers, and I am committed to finding those answers and providing those answers.
Do you see where there was something that went wrong as a professional at an agency with 28 years, or do you have to count on someone else to give you the final report?
I see that something went wrong, and I've acknowledged that something went wrong.
Then what went wrong? Was the special agent in charge not doing their job? Was the shooter given extra time? Was the sniper doing their job? I mean, these are things that people who've been around for 28 years can analyze quickly. I watched it live on TV, and then within minutes saw a number of facts and factors that would have and should have been known by people who were there. You've got 28 years. You're showing up here telling us and the American public, well, I've got to wait for the final answer. What is your evaluation?
Just out of curiosity, Director, it's been 9 days. Every American wants these questions answered. Do you have a ballpark estimate of what Mr. Sessions asked you would be able to answer?
So I can tell
time-wise?
I can tell you on our mission assurance internal investigation, we are targeting to have that completed within 60 days. There's also an external investigation that is going to be taking place. There are a number of Office of Inspector General investigations as well, and we are working in concert. And then, of course, there is the Department of Justice, FBI, criminal investigation.
We are currently in the midst of an especially concentrated presidential campaign in the moment. That is also paired with, of course, elections happening across the country that are happening in about 100 days. So the notion of a report coming out in 60 days when the threat environment is so high in the United States, irrespective of party, is not acceptable. And I think it's very important to understand that. This is not theater. This is not about jockeying. This is about the safety of some of the most highly targeted and valued targets internationally and domestically in the United States of America. So the idea that a report will be finalized in 60 days, let alone prior to any actionable decisions that would be made, is simply not acceptable.
It is unfathomable that a 20-year-old on the radar of Secret Service and local law enforcement before President Trump went on stage was able to climb onto the roof of a building with a rifle and fire off multiple rounds before he was neutralized. Was Mr. Crooks acting alone?
Again, I would have to refer you to the FBI's investigation.
Was he just a lone gunman?
I would have to refer you to the FBI's investigation for motive.
What did the Technical Services Division determine was going to be the event perimeter?
Those are questions that we are asking, and we're
I mean, you're sitting here today. Come on, Director. Everybody said this. You knew you were going to be asked that question because it's been asked multiple times. So this is an easy one. What did they determine was going to be the event perimeter? So you should know that. I mean, this is not, gee, I got to wait till someone else tells me. What was it?
Again, I don't want to speak to specifics of the event.
Okay, this is a specific.
I understand.
This is a specific that you ought to know. As someone who said the buck stops with me, I'm going to stay in my job, I'm going to give the answers to the American people, and I know what happened, except for you're not going to tell us. And you're not going to tell the American people. And you yourself said in an interview that that foments this notion of conspiracy theories. Guess what? When you sit here and repeatedly tell people, hey, I have to wait, as it frustrated everybody on this committee, guess what? It undermines your credibility and whether you're really going to get to it. So I'm going to ask you again, what did the Technical Service Division determine was going to be the event perimeter?
We are still gathering reports. We are interviewing individuals.
You know what it is, though. No, you're just not going to tell us, right?
When I have those details, I will most certainly share those.
Was the gun already on the roof, or did the shooter carry the gun up with him?
I do not have that information at this time.
Well, when was the last sweep of that roof done prior to the rally?
I do not have that information at this time.
You're not making this easy for us.
I have to say, Director, we're pretty close to the halfway point during this. You answered more questions with an ABC reporter than you have with members of Congress. We have a lot more questions. The American people are demanding that we get answers to those questions, and that's what the purpose of this hearing is today. So I'm sure a lot of the questions that have already been asked are going to be asked again, and hopefully we can get some answers to those questions. I strongly implore you to answer those questions. You're here with a subpoena, and we expect you to answer the questions. Chair now recognizes Ms. Mace from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Cheadle, the American people are watching, and they're wondering if there are any questions you can answer honestly today. So, Director Cheadle, I have a series of questions, very specific questions. I want very specific answers. Most of my questions are going to demand a yes or no answer. Do you understand?
I do.
Okay, my first question. Both sides of the aisle today have asked for your resignation. Would you like to use my 5 minutes to draft your resignation letter, yes or no?
No, thank you.
Was this a colossal failure?
It was a failure.
Yes or no? Was it a colossal failure is the question, yes or no?
I have admitted this is a terrible...
This is a yes or no series of questions. Was this a colossal failure, yes or no?
Yes.
Was this tragedy preventable, yes or no?
Yes.
Has the Secret Service been transparent with this committee?
Yes.
Would you say the fact that we had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today as being transparent, yes or no?
I have always been eager
Yes
to
or no?
come
You didn't
and
want to
talk
answer
to
the
committee.
question. We had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today. That is not transparent, by the way. You stated earlier, Secret Service is not political. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say leaking your opening statement to Punchbowl News, Politico's Playbook, and Washington Post several hours before you sent it to this committee as being political? Yes or no?
I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's bullshit. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record articles by Punchbowl News, Political Playbook, Washington Post, all done at 5:24 a.m., 6:12 a.m., 6:34 a.m., a solid 3 to 4 hours before this committee got your statement.
Without objection, so ordered.
Okay. Is the Secret Service fully cooperating with our committee?
Yes.
Okay, you say you're fully cooperating with this committee. On July 15th, this committee sent you a list of demands of information that we wanted. Has the Secret Service provided this committee a complete list of all law enforcement personnel that were there that day? Have you done that? Have you provided a list to the Oversight Committee? Yes or no?
I will have to get back to you on that.
That is a no. Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th? Yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
Mr. Chairman,
Completely dishonest.
Mr. Chairman,
Chairman, I want to.
Come on.
We have to maintain decorum in this committee, no matter how
have you provided
upset we
any
get.
and all memos to this committee that we've asked you on July 15th? Have you provided all memorandums within the Secret Service?
I would have to get back to you on
that. That is a no. You are being dishonest or lying. You're being dishonest here with this committee. These are important questions that the American people want answers to, and you're just dodging and talking around it in generalities. And we had to subpoena you to be here, and you won't even answer the questions. We have asked you repeatedly to answer our questions. This isn't hard. These are not hard questions. Have you provided us all communications from the Secret Service related to that day and that rally? Have you provided this committee? We've asked for this information on July 15th. Have you provided any of this information that this committee has asked of the Secret Service? Any of it?
I'll have to get back to you.
Have you even read this letter that we sent you? Did you even read this?
Yes.
Okay. And you have said you don't know, you have no idea. The answer is no. We haven't gotten a single document or piece of information or data from you or your agency in related to the rally that we have asked you for. So was this attempted assassination of Donald Trump a failure of training or execution or both?
I think that those are answers that we need to examine.
Training, execution, or both? Which one?
I think those are answers.
All right. How many Secret Service personnel have lost their jobs due to this colossal failure?
At this time, none.
How many Secret Service personnel have been required to take a refresher course on how not to let people shoot Donald Trump?
Our personnel are currently operational. We are examining the facts of this investigation, and we will make the changes necessary.
What time did law enforcement become aware that there was an individual on the roof with a clear line of sight to President Trump?
I am still verifying timelines.
Of course, 9 days in, you have no answers. How many minutes went by between the time law enforcement saw and took photos of crooks and the shooting? How many minutes?
I am still verifying timelines.
57 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Do you have the authority to beef up security of any of your protectees?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So were you also aware there was a credible threat President Trump was facing? He was facing a heightened security threat to a foreign adversary?
Yes.
Okay. So given that there was an increased threat to President Trump's life, was he provided a full security complement akin to what a sitting U.S. president would receive?
He was provided a full complement of security based on the threat assessment that we had.
That's not my question.
And the venue.
My question is, if he'd been the sitting president, would he have had the same security he had on July 13th, or would have been beefed up?
There is a difference between the sitting president
So your answer is he didn't?
And continuity of government and the responsibility that we have.
So he did not. Okay, there wasn't a CAT team, a full CAT team on site. There wasn't counter-surveillance teams on site. But this is the thing. You just said you had the ability to beef up the security. You knew about the threat, and you didn't. And that's as telling is it is chilling. We have satellite images from the Butler Fairgrounds. Have you visited the site?
No, I have not.
9 days and you have not visited the site. You should have been there that night. Did you talk to, that evening, did you talk to the team, the heroes that surrounded the president? Did you call them that night?
They were still operational work.
So that's an answer is no. Did you call them the next day?
President. Yes, I spoke with
You called them the very next day, not the day of, or was it 72 hours after?
I don't know the timeline, but I spoke with
Okay,
them
because you're under oath.
immediately following.
I think it was 72 hours after you waited 3 days. What is immediately clear is that there are a number of structures that need to be secured. Of these, Director, other than the first, immediate 4, what's the most dangerous site that should have been secured? Because Security 101, you got to mitigate the high ground.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the next most dangerous site, what was the closest structure to the president, other than the 4 immediate ones that you had your counter sniper teams on?
There are a number of structures around that event site.
You know who the shooter knew? The shooter has visited the site 2 more times than you have, and he had a drone, and he picked the AGR building. So you said, do you remember in an ABC interview you did that you didn't have people on the roof of the AGR building because you were worried about safety because of the slope?
I recall that statement.
Okay. Does the Secret Service have written policy you can share with us about slope roofs?
No.
Okay. So why'd you act like there was one? Because is it your practice to comment on enormous events of enormous national implications when you're ignorant of the facts? That's rhetorical. So here's this thing with the slopes. You go all the way up to like 1812. You can go to a 112, which is about as flat as you can get without it being completely flat. And you're saying that there was a danger, safety concern there. But the problem is, Director, you put your counter snipers on a 312 roof, which is steeper than the 112. And by the way, the 112 is ADA compliant. You can build a ramp for a wheelchair on a 112 roof. So these are nothing but pathetic excuses, and they make no sense, and they're a bunch of cow dung. All the law enforcement I've spoken with over the last 9 days are amazed that the AGR rooftop was not secure. And you want to know why? Because it's dangerous. I have never had any long gun training in my life. I own an AR-15, and last time I shot it one time my whole life. It was 6 years ago. That is until Saturday, where we recreated the events in Savoy, Texas, where we recreated what happened in Butler. I was lying prone on a sloped roof at 130 yards at 6:30 at night. And I knew that he had a scope. I didn't know what kind, red dot or magnified. So I shot 8 rounds from both. You know what the result was? 15 out of 16 kill shots. And the one I missed would have hit the president's ear. That's a 94% success rate. And that shooter was a better shot than me. It is a miracle President Trump wasn't killed. Corey Comparatore's life is over because that damn shooter made it on the roof. And it wasn't the roof that was dangerous. It was the nut job on top of the roof. You know what else is dangerous? I believe your horrifying ineptitude and your lack of skilled leadership is a disgrace. Your obfuscating today is shameful. And you should be fired immediately and go back to Garden Doritos. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
At what time was Secret Service aware of the active threat against President Trump? Director, what time?
So the Secret Service was aware that there was an individual who had been identified as suspicious, and that individual was attempting to be tracked down.
At what time?
I don't have a specific timeline other than to tell
Director,
you,
it's been 9 days.
I understand
At what
that.
time?
I want to make sure that I give you factual
When
information,
the
sir.
counter sniper team was on the roof, and they identified that there was suspicious activity on the roof in question, what was the chain of command's orders around the person on said roof? Because I'm quite sure somebody saw under your organization, the Secret Service, I'm quite sure somebody saw the shooter on the roof. So what was the communication through the chain of command to deal with said person?
What I can tell you is that when the individual was identified by the counter sniper, they took one shot and neutralized that individual.
But that was after the shooter already took a shot, is that correct?
That is correct.
So what you're saying now is that the Secret Service did not see the shooter on the roof until after the shooter took a shot?
I do not have all of those details at this time.
If you don't have those details after 9 days, Director, then what you're telling me is that you guys didn't see it. Is that correct?
I am telling you, I don't have all the details of the sequence at this time.
Director, it's been 9 days. Either you have the information or you do not. Is that correct?
We are still in the process of conducting interviews and an investigation.
Some of my colleagues have texted me over the last couple days, bipartisan, about whether you should lose your job. And I've been quiet on that question because I wanted to see what you were going to do today. In my opinion, you do need to be fired immediately. And it is because this is gross incompetence. And the fact that it's been 9 days, and these are simple questions to answer, I'm quite sure if I asked any one of my kids if they got in trouble and I told them to give me the details, I would get more answers from them than I'm getting from you right now. And that's what's frustrating on a bipartisan basis, on a nonpartisan basis. This is a joke. And Director, you're in charge, and that's why you need to go. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I'd like to remind you that you're under oath. The site team has a senior supervisor, an advanced team, a protective intelligence team, a counter sniper element, and detail. Who was the agent in charge? How long has she been the agent in charge? And what is her Secret Service background?
So I'm not going to provide a name.
Why not? You're here to answer our questions.
This forum, I'm not going to provide names of.
You stated in your testimony, you said, I am here today to answer your questions.
That is correct.
Answer the question.
I'm not going to provide names of our personnel.
Why not?
Today.
The American people are demanding these answers from you today, Ms. Cheadle.
I will do the best to provide you accurate information based on the facts that I have at this time.
You're not answering our questions. The advance element coordinates with other intel or law enforcement partners, identifies threats and weaknesses at the sites and movements. We'd like a copy of the advance report. Have you brought it here with you today?
We will comply with the request for the documentation that has been requested.
When will that be, Ms. Cheadle? Because you should have brought it today.
I am certain that our personnel are working on obtaining all of that document.
I don't believe you, and neither do the people watching this hearing. You're not doing well, as Mr. Moskowitz informed you. You've been sitting here for over 3 hours, and I have you know the entire country is demanding you resign and demanding that you be fired if you do not resign. Things are not going well for you. You need to answer the questions. Was there a protective intelligence team, and what technical resources were utilized for that event, specifically drone or helicopter assets?
There were a number of technical assets that were deployed for that event, and there was a protective intelligence team that was assigned to that event.
Why was Crooks able to fly a drone over the entire area the day of the rally and the day of his assassination attempt?
To my knowledge, he did not fly the drone over the entire area.
How did he fly a drone over the area, period? Any part of the area?
Again, I would have to go back and check the timeline of when that took place and when the event.
Why didn't you bring the timeline with you today to answer our questions?
I don't have all of the answers on the timelines based on the criminal investigation.
Were you not prepared today to answer our questions?
I am prepared to answer the questions based on the information and wanted to be able to provide.
Do you have a timeline do you have a timeline at all from any of the day?
I have a timeline that does not have specifics.
That's shocking. That is absolutely unacceptable. That means you are a failure at your job. Crooks was neutralized after he shot President Trump in the face, Ms. Cheadle. Is he only a threat once he fires the weapon?
As soon as the counter sniper identified that individual, they were able to neutralize them.
How were people in the crowd? Okay, then let's just take it this way. People under your command did not consider him to be a threat, yet people in the crowd knew he had a gun and considered him to be a threat. That means that you are a complete failure as the director of the Secret Service, that people under your command don't perceive a man laying on a roof with direct line to the president with a gun. They don't perceive that to be a threat, yet the people in the crowd do. How is that possible?
That's the last question, but please answer the question, Ms. Director.
I'm not certain at this time how the information from the people in the crowd was relayed to any law enforcement personnel.
No, you knew, that everyone knew. The people there knew that there was a danger. They knew there was a threat to President Trump, and it was allowed to happen. Was there a stand-down order, Ms. Cheadle? No. Was there a conspiracy to kill President Trump?
Absolutely not.
Then how did this happen? And why are you still sitting here not turning in your letter of resignation?
Last question, but please answer, and then I'll recognize Ms. Presley. Please answer that question.
That is what we are investigating to determine.
We're waiting for your letter. We're waiting for your letter of resignation, and you really need to consider doing that before you leave today.
The best way to keep your job is to answer the questions, not play this shell game, not sing the Slim Shady song, wasn't me. I mean, come on. How long did you prepare for this hearing?
I've been preparing for this hearing over the weekend and into last week.
Okay, 5 days, 6 days?
As soon as I was notified.
And how long was that?
About this hearing.
Okay, 4 days?
I began preparing.
4 days, 3 days?
I'm not sure the date that I got the letter asking me to be here.
What are you sure of? Are you sure the color of your hair? Are you sure the color of your suit? I'm just, like, tell the American people, what are you sure of? You don't even know when you started preparing for the hearing? I mean, the biggest hearing of your life, and you have no clue? You can't remember when you started preparing for this hearing? Can you understand why those words seem hollow to the American people who are supposed to entrust their faith in you?
I assure you, the moment I received notification.
But you can't remember. You got a little Alzheimer's, dementia going? I mean, what, you can't remember.
I have several active investigations going on and an operational agency to run.
Okay. All right. But you want to take accountability, right? The buck stops with you, right?
I am taking accountability.
Super. Then let's start with trying to answer some questions. You keep referring to the FBI. When asked how many shell casings were on the roof, you referred to the FBI. When asked if there were explosives in the car, you referred to the FBI. When asked if Crooks was acting alone, you referred to the FBI. See a common theme here? I can go on and on. My question is, who at the FBI should I speak with? Wait for it. Wait for it.
The FBI is responsible for the criminal investigation.
Is there a name?
I'm not certain.
I'm not certain. All right, here we go. I'm not certain. I don't know. Let me ask a different question. Have you been in communication with the FBI?
Yes, I have.
With whom?
I speak with the director and the deputy director.
Okay. And what have they shared with you about this investigation? So I'll give you an opportunity to answer again. Did they share with you how many shell casings were on the roof?
They have shared with me the evidence.
Did they share with you how many shell casing were on the roof?
Yes.
Okay, how many were there?
I would refer to the FBI for
how
their investigation.
Many were there?
And their information that they need to share in their investigation.
So they've shared the information with you. You just don't want to share the information with us, correct?
We have concurrent investigations that are going on.
So they have shared this information with you. You know the answer to the question. You just refuse to answer the question from the member of Congress who has subpoenaed you to be here. Is there a different answer to that question?
I was always willing to come here and testify before this oversight hearing.
Beautiful. Then let's do that. Let's for once have your actions match your words. So you've been in communication with the FBI. You know the answers, and you refuse to tell us the answers. So I will ask you again. You know how many shell casings were on that roof. What is the answer to that question?
I think it's pertinent.
What is the answer to that question?
I think it's pertinent to talk to you about the information that the Secret Service has and that the Secret Service knows related
I'm
to the
asking you
events
an answer to the question. If you're supposed to be in charge, if the buck stops with you, how come you can't share the answers? What are you covering up? What are you hiding, my friend?
I'm not covering anything up.
Then why can't you answer a simple question?
I would leave it to the criminal investigation to answer questions related to that.
When you talk to the FBI and you asked them how many explosives, well, let me ask you, did you ask them how many explosives were on the roof? Did they answer that question? Or in the car, excuse me. Did they answer that question for you?
Yes.
Yes. So you know the answer to that question that my colleagues have asked you. But again, you refuse to give us the answers. You're playing this wasn't me. Well, I submit to you, if you can't, and it's not a can't, it's a won't. It's not a can't. It's not a I don't know. It's a I choose not to answer the question. Well, let me tell you, Ms. Cheadle, if you're going to lead, you need to lead. If you want to be in charge, then answer the question or step aside and have someone with the courage and the guts to answer to the American people the questions that they deserve answers to. And with that, I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Boebert from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to continue down that vein. You have been here sitting today, Director Cheadle, definitively able to dismiss erroneous information and speculation. However, you are refusing to answer questions that we now know that you have the information for. You are saying that you are wanting to answer questions that the Secret Service has information to. Well, ma'am, you are the Secret Service. You are the director. You have said that you are the best for the job. So I'm going to ask you some questions now knowing that you do have answers from the FBI, whom you have been passing the buck to this entire day. And I'll start with something that, you know, maybe the FBI doesn't know because it has to deal with you personally. You said you spoke with President Trump after the assassination attempt. And I want to know, did you apologize to him directly for nearly having President Trump killed?
Yes, I did.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that you recognize that this was your failure. Now, since the assassination attempt, you are under oath, reminding you, have you communicated with anyone at the White House on an encrypted messaging app like Signal? Yes or no?
No, I have not.
Are you willing to surrender your personal phone for analysis?
If I am required to do so.
Was the suspicious individual ever approached by an agent? Was any contact ever made with him?
Not to my knowledge.
Is that the standard protocol for someone who is identified as suspicious?
The protocol would be to locate the individual and
you said that he was
interview.
located 2 to 5 times approximately?
No, I said that the information was passed potentially somewhere between 2 to 5
And he was
times.
never located by an agent?
To my knowledge, that individual was not located by an agent.
We have dozens of rally goers who have identified him and not one agent on the ground. There are many, many, many agents on the ground, local law enforcement, Secret Service. No one was able to identify him and have sights on and see him.
What I'm saying is that the agents that were on the ground at the time, I have no knowledge that they were able to interview him or locate him.
Thank you. Was there a local law enforcement officer who approached the roof and saw the shooter and saw that he was present on the roof?
That is the information that has been shared with me.
Have you spoke to that local law enforcement officer?
No, I have not.
Are you going to?
It is part of a criminal investigation that the FBI is interviewing those individuals.
Were agents stationed on the water tower?
No.
Why?
That would not be something that would be included in a security plan.
Has the man who is reported to have been present wearing a gray suit who allegedly requested a photo of the dead body of the assassin on top of the AGR roof been identified?
I don't have that information.
Is that something that you've heard of?
No.
Were ATF agents present at the rally?
To attend or to work?
To work.
Not to my knowledge.
How long did the counter sniper have crooks in his sights before the shooter opened fire on President Trump?
I don't have that specific timeline.
Will you be able to tell us if he communicated with other agents on what he was seeing through his sights?
Once I have that information, absolutely.
Because we need to know why he waited for multiple rounds to be fired at President Trump before the threat was neutralized. We need to know if he was given an order to hold fire. You are responsible for the loss of a life and the shooting that took place on President Trump. You do need to resign. This is bipartisan. You need to be fired. You do not need to hold this position. You are not the best for this job. I am over my time, but I cannot tolerate your watch any longer, and I'm going to continue to call daily for you to be removed from your position, ma'am.
Madam Director, how many press conferences have you held since the assassination attempt?
We have put out press releases.
How many press conferences have you held? Gone to the mic, taken questions from the public, from the media? How many?
I have not held any.
How many has Secretary Mayorkas held?
I don't.
0. How many has the FBI held? 0. How many has the Department of Justice held? I know you know the answer.
I believe there was a press conference in Butler after the incident occurred.
By local law enforcement, not by you and not by the Department of Homeland Security. So this is how misinformation flies. I mean, in the darkness, in the absence of information. Now we have 9 days later before a congressional committee, we all represent almost 1 million people, and you still don't have answers. Are you aware that national news anchors are saying this was a hoax? On national television, they're saying, no, the president wasn't shot, it was flying glass. Are you aware of that?
I have not heard those reports.
Are you aware that, I mean, there are rumors rampant online that there were multiple shooters?
Yes.
Are you aware that because the shooter had overseas encrypted platforms in Belgium and New Zealand and in Germany, that a lot of people are speculating there could have been foreign involvement, logically? Are you aware of that?
Yes.
And have you done anything to disabuse any of these notions today? No. You haven't. Madam Director, I would fire you. Regardless of the failure, I would fire you just how you've handled it since. You should have been the first to the mics to say, America, world, I want to assure you we're going to get to the bottom of this. I want to assure you full transparency. Our agency clearly had major gaps here, and I want to personally take responsibility and accountability. You should have been the first, standing alongside Secretary Mayorkas, and I would even go so far as to say have daily press conferences, updating everyone on what we know. But you haven't had any of that. What are you hiding behind?
I am not hiding.
Because you're making the situation worse. I think you've heard that on a bipartisan basis here. You are making this situation far worse in the absence of information. Let's move on.
I'll deliver my closing remarks. Director Cheadle, I subpoenaed you to appear today to get answers for the American people about the failures that led to the assassination attempt of President Donald J. Trump. Unfortunately, you refused to answer today. And this committee is not known for its model of bipartisanship, but I think today we came together unanimously in our disappointment for your lack of answers. You've stated that the FBI will investigate and give a report, and you estimate 60 days. We've been waiting for months and months for lots of different bits of information from the FBI. We have no confidence in the FBI. The majority of this committee has no confidence in the FBI. I sincerely hoped that the hearing today would give not just Congress confidence in the Secret Service, but the American people would have confidence in the Secret Service. We don't have confidence, not just in Congress, but I don't believe the American people tonight when they go to bed are going to have confidence that the Secret Service is the best it can be at protecting President Biden, at protecting the First Lady, at protecting President Trump, at protecting their families. I've never said this before, and I've presided over a lot of hearings. I don't think there was one question asked by anyone that the average American hasn't already asked at a diner or at church or at a ball game. The American people have questions. They deserve answers. Congress deserves answers. You were subpoenaed today to provide answers, and ma'am, you did not do that. So as Ranking Member Raskin stated, he and I will be sending a letter requesting that you submit your resignation as a step toward accountability in what happened. And one of the biggest frustrations that many of us have, especially on this side of the aisle, is that there's never accountability in this administration. And when you look at the debacles prior to July 13th, I mean, it would be hard to beat the withdrawal in Afghanistan, the debacle there, and no one was held accountable. To this day, no one has been held accountable for that. But here we have clearly video showing people notifying the police, and the police are blaming the Secret Service. The Secret Service are blaming the police. Homeland Security is blaming everybody. But at the end of the day, after this hearing and after our request for information, we don't have any answers for the American people, and we don't have that confidence that you can lead the Secret Service to restore the confidence. If there's no further business, without objection, the committee stands adjourned.